I'm excited to be here and also challenged. The excitement is, this subject is one I'm most passionate about of all the things that I communicate or worked on or focused on in my life. And that's because I believe if you're not happy in your intimate relationship, you're not happy. Because no matter what happens, no matter how much love we have from our children or how much we accomplish in our lives or how much we achieve, you know, I personally believe in our soul, everybody wants that experience of aliveness. So I'm not just about marriages. I had 4 different fathers, so I know the impact that things can come from being in a position where families don't stay together. But frankly, I wouldn't have changed it. You know, to see my mother miserable and unhappy, to stay with somebody, which is what she did with one of those relationships for 10 years, I wouldn't want to see her do again. So I'm not for the institution by itself. I'm not for the relationship. I'm for the people in it. And what I really believe, though, is it's a critically important institution, and I've supported it amazingly, but I want to make sure that the people within it don't just settle for being able to say, I'm still married. To me, that's not an accomplishment. You know, I really don't. And I say that also because, you know, that sense of aliveness affects your kids as much as anything else as well. And so I really believe that any relationship can be brought to love and passion again. But the challenge, of course, is that most people today have a perspective, an expectation, where the highest standard they have is not for themselves, but what they expect from their partner. And I think that's the #1 reversal that has to occur in any relationship for things to transform. That as long as we're looking at what am I getting out of a relationship, then we're going to be disappointed, we're going to be frustrated, we're going to have challenges. And so my view of things is to shift that with people, and to do it in a very practical way is to really shift both parties, but also I focus on both male and female. But it is true that most men really do care, but they're not armed with the understanding of females. But I think understanding that and being actually applying it in an impactful way are 2 different things. And I think the awareness is the first step, but then training yourself so you can feel successful, because most men, and I think to some extent a great deal of women today, do not feel like this is an area they can be successful in. When you talk to people about the areas of their life that they feel strongest in, you'll almost always find they're stronger in their career, they're stronger in their relationship with their kids, they're stronger even in their body than they are in their relationship. And it's because it's so difficult when you're dealing with a person who is, you know, got all these energies and thoughts and feelings that are completely different than you. And simultaneously, you know, you have a love for them, but also you're facing the deep fear that everybody has underneath. And that fear is that love won't last. And when that happens, people start to really break up inside. So what I thought, you know, my excitement is to talk about the subject and to really try and serve you. My challenge is, the shortest seminar I usually do is 50 hours, 50. Because I don't believe in getting up and just speaking and sharing a principle or something like that. What I really believe in is doing it. So I'll take people in a weekend and we'll talk about the principle, and then boom, we go after it so that it gets in your body. We do it enough times till you're doing it. You're not just thinking it. So, you know, the short little time we have here doesn't come close to that. But I think I've got a format of some things I can introduce you to. So first, I want to thank you for the privilege to be here. Second, I'll tell you in advance that I'm going to try and cover a lot of terrain in a short period of time. But also, in doing so, I'd like to make it more active. And what I mean by that is, when I look around and I see the challenges that most people have in relationship, I think the #1 challenge is something I've seen for 30 years. And I don't just see it in relationship. I've always wanted to know the answer to a question. I've been obsessed by the question of what makes the difference in people's lives. You know, I grew up very poor. I'm talking to my 4th father, and I'm saying, Mom, I'm confused. You know, I was not popular in school. I love people. So I was passionate about figuring out what's the difference in people. You know, why is it that some people are given everything? You know, the type, they really do have parents that love them, that are there for them. They have tremendous educational background. They have all the economic resources, and they end up spending their life going in and out of a rehab. You know, they had all the resources. And then you meet somebody who's been, you know, abused, or no one's been there for them, or they've been physically abused or sexually abused, or the worst things you could possibly happen to a human being. And they turn out to be some of the finest human beings you'd ever meet in your life, who are out there working to help other people and make a difference. So we all want to believe that our lives have turned out because of our biography. And the reality is we can all find people with a horrible biography who have an extraordinary life, and we have people with an extraordinary biography who have a life that none of us would want to trade with. So what's the real challenge? And I believe that the challenge in relationships and in life, in every area, is emotional fitness. That it starts with how emotionally fit you are in a relationship. And there are patterns that make people emotionally unfit. There are patterns that make people frustrated. There are patterns that make people depressed. There are patterns that make people angry. There are patterns that make people feel sorry for themselves. And there are also patterns that make people compassionate, playful, physically passionate, emotionally strong. You know, there are different patterns, and they stand out to you when you've been around that many people. So I've had now 50 million people get my books and tapes, but I've been with 3 million people face-to-face from 80 countries. And when you're around those many people, the pattern becomes clear. And I've been able to use those patterns, and that's what I want to kind of expose you to tonight. And frankly, you know, I think these patterns are common sense. But, you know, how many of you notice that common sense is not too common? You know, everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's simple. But, you know, a lot of people say, I know this stuff. Well, if you're not doing it, you don't know it. You understand it. And understanding and $3 will almost get you a cup of Starbucks these days, you know? It's really nice to understand things, but that doesn't change anything. You got to get in your body and actually do it. But I've learned enough of these patterns that now, over the last, 20 years or so, of the 30 years of my career, I'm the guy that gets the call when the fire starts. You know, when the athlete is burning down on national television and something's got to be done right now to turn them around. And, I either get them or I don't, and for 30 years I've gotten them. That's how I've built my reputation. And that you've got to produce results right now. And I'm able to do that because of an understanding of these need structures I'm going to talk to you about. Or I get the call when the child is going to commit suicide, or the adult. And in 30 years, knock on wood, I've never lost one suicide in 30 years. That doesn't mean I won't someday, but I never have, not one single time out of the thousands of suicide attempts. And it's again because of understanding these needs I'm going to talk to you about. I get the phone call, in the middle of the night, true story, and it's the President of the United States saying, Tony, they're going to impeach me in the morning. What should I do? And I say, could you have called me sooner? True story, So in the experience of looking to make those changes and looking at how to change, same thing in relationships, couples that are gone, the films that I wanted to make with Chloe, I said, let's not make films with couples that have troubles. Let's make couples that look like they've gone beyond the edge. By anybody's estimate, there's no way to turn it around. Because by that extreme, when someone watches the film, they look at their own life and they go, oh my God, these people can do it, and they did it here, I could do it too. That's the contrast we want. But the basis of all that I do comes down to knowing that the difference in your life, your relationship, your physical life, your emotional life, any aspect of your life comes down to this sense of psychological strength or emotional fitness. And what I mean by that is this. Let's go straight to relationship for a second. What is relationship really about? Intimate relationship. Well, other than a friendship, the only difference between a friendship and an intimate relationship should be intimacy, which is why we call it love and passion. So just hanging out together for the sake of the kids is not something we're talking about here. Now, if you're going to have that incredible relationship, it's all based on emotion. It isn't based on logic. When you fall in love with somebody, you don't make a checklist and go, I like this, hate that, this is good, hate that, this is good, don't like that. How do you fall in love? What do? You focus on every little thing you could possibly like or love about this person, and you fully associate to it every way, and you tell all your friends until you make them sick, right? And you're talking about him, you're thinking of those person, I love when she does this, I love when he does that, that's an amazing, and you're talking about him, you're thinking about him, and you put whole bottles of cologne on, and in the middle of the night, you take extra showers, in the middle of the night, you're thinking about him, you call him up, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you go, I was just thinking about you, sorry to call so late, but were you thinking about me? And they say yes, and you're like, ah. Who's been there? Raise your hand, say I. Yes, now, if you're not raising your hand, we really have problems for you at this stage, right? So what's interesting is, that experience, how long does it last? That was a really long, quiet answer to that one. Can it last forever, yes or no? Yes or no? Notice I got people that work with people in their relationships saying, no, that's not encouraging. Yes, because many people in this field think, oh no, that's a phase in the relationship. That phase, where everything is just la la la, beautiful, and having that expectation is, that's what's wrong with people. They need to lower their expectation and get realistic about marriage. That is not what it's about. I want to tell you something. I've spent the last 20 years of my life interviewing people that are having amazing relationships, who've been together 20, 30, and 40 years, and they don't just hang out, they love each other, and they're passionate for each other. Passionate. I interviewed a couple who came to one of my seminars. It wasn't a relationship seminar. And they're at a program I called Date with Destiny that I do. It's a 6-day program. And for 5 days in a row, this couple sat in the front row. He was 92 years old. She is 89. And they were playing so full out. I mean, so full out. Because my seminars are not about just sitting and listening. We do stuff. But during any break or sense of a break, they were touching each other, holding each other, and it was getting out of control. It was like, get a room. And so, it was really tough, and they kept me in the front row. I was a little distracted here, So finally I stopped everything I was doing and I said, I want to interview you two. Come up here on stage. And I brought them on stage, got 2 chairs, and I said, I want to understand something. I said, you guys have been married how many years? 52 years. That's amazing. Now, clearly you love each other, but it appears you also love each other. And they said, oh yes. And I said, you guys seem to have a lot of passion for each other. And they both said, oh yes, of course. I said, what's the secret to your 52 years? And the lady said, well, you can't just love, gotta touch. And everybody cracked up, you know. And I said, well, so you still at this age have great physical passion? They said, of course. And he said, oh my God, I live for it. He's 92, right? Right? And I said, well, what's the secret to your physical passion? And she said, well, we try anything once, and if we like it, we do it again. I thought, okay, that's good. So if you think about a relationship, other than the maintenance of some responsibility, people today in our society won't do things just for responsibility. They've been taught to focus on themselves, unfortunately. And while we all have to have a sense of responsibility, what's even greater, it's like discipline. Discipline never works long term. Never. What works is when you become addicted to something positively new. You trade one addiction for another. When you shift from having to doing something to wanting to do something. So our focus is how to make that happen. But I'd say this to you. If you want to change a relationship, the number one thing you have to do is master your own emotions. If you don't do that, forget it. There's no hope. And what's wonderful, though, is it's easy to do if you know how. But none of us have been taught really emotional leadership. Emotional management is the very minimum, much less how to direct and shape ourselves. I don't mean faking your emotions. I don't mean pushing them down. I don't believe in positive thinking, although you may think that from watching, you know, some of the media coverage, because people see me in an audience and there's 12,000 people and they're jumping and leaping and people go, oh, they're just in this motivational stuff. It's not that. It's that energy is part of life. And if you're sitting passively listening, you're not going to be able to listen very long, certainly not 50 hours, anything like that. If you turned on and you saw a rock and roll concert, you'd see people cheering, going for it. If you went to a sporting event, why do people do it? Because there's an energy there. So I create that in those environments. But I'm not into positive thinking. I'm not here tonight to tell you to go to your garden and say, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. You know? I'm very clear that I believe that life is about leadership and being truthful to yourself. And so I believe, number one, that the mandate for any great relationship and the mandate for anybody to lead their own life and not be a follower is you got to see things as they are, but not worse than they are. Because that's where most people go. That's where they go in relationship. That's why they start to tear it down. That's why the relationship starts to break down, because people get scared when it isn't working out, and then they make it worse than it is so they don't have to try. Because they don't want to try again and be disappointed. They don't want to feel that sense of rejection. They don't want to feel that sense of failure. So most people make it much worse than it is. People tell me all the time, oh, I'm skeptical or I'm pessimistic. I said, no, you're gutless. It takes no guts. It takes no courage to be a pessimist, to say it's not going to work, to try to find out what's wrong. What's wrong is always available. It's always what's right. So I'm not into positive thinking, but I am into intelligence. And intelligence says, see it as it is. Don't make it worse than it is. I mean, people all the time say, my problem is I'm big bone. No, you're freaking fat. Tell the truth. You know, what is this big bone story? You know, the only way it gets better is if you can see how it is. Don't make it worse than it is. Don't try to make it so it's impossible to change. That's not true. It's not true at all. The second mandate, I think, to changing anything in your life, to leading your life, is once you see it as it is, not worse than it is, then you got to see it better than it is. Because that's the thing that's missing from most relationships. There's no vision. I mean, without a vision, in the Bible it says people what? Perish. And when a relationship has no vision for greater than where they are, that relationship is going downhill, if not destroyed. I believe that every relationship, every part of life, every part of a human being needs a compelling future. If the future's not more compelling than today could be tough, but if the future's compelling, we can get there. And that's what every leader does. And every one of you in this room, and I know some of you are here, I guess, from the general public as well, just for your own relationships, I really acknowledge you for. But I know that you're from the military here, I know the therapists here, people from all walks of life. You're all leaders. What's your job? To lead. Your job is to help people see it as it is, not worse than it is. What's your job? Help them create a compelling future. See it better than it is, so there's a reason to give my all again. Otherwise, there's just no juice. There's no energy. Why? They'll go through the motions. complain with each other, not really believe it's going to work, and nothing will change. And then finally, the third step that we've all got to do if we're going to change our life or anybody else's is make it the way we see it. And that's where strategy comes in. I try to take things that are complex and make them as simple as possible. I've noticed most people in the psychological world try to make it as complex as humanly possible. Because it makes us feel so sophisticated when we can talk with all these complex words and elements and so forth, and we can really, we got our degrees and we're somebody. But you know what? That doesn't help anybody. So I look for a nickel word and not trying to sound harsh to get to the heart of something. I'm trying to take something complex and make it simple so that people really will apply it. And that's the focus here. So if you and I are going to talk about relationships as a whole and say, what are they? I come back to the base of it. It's all emotion. That's all it is. If two people are both high as a kite, they're having the time of their life is going well, their work is going well, everything's going well, what kind of relationship are these two people going to have? You tell me. Good, great, average, terrible, what is it? Come on, yell it out. You know it's going to be great. Because in an emotional high, everyone communicates well when they're in a great state. Isn't it true? Men and women, even men communicate well when they're in a great state. Right? Is it true? So this is the key. Now, if you've got those same two people and they're in an okay state, life's okay, business okay, kids are okay, career's okay, mother-in-law's okay today, whatever. If they're both okay, what's the state going to be like? What's the relationship going to be like? You can predict it. What's going to be like? Good, great, average, what would you say? Average. If both people are suffering, they're hurting, they're in pain, frustration with their work, overwhelmed with their kids, some challenge with a family member, hitting a stage of life where they're questioning their identity or their future or what they can do. They don't have a compelling future. And they're both in a low state. You tell me, you know it, you've got the experience. What kind of relationship? Good, bad, great, horrible? What would you say? Quick. Sucks. Technical term. Thank you, sir. It sucks. Yes, that relationship is going to suck in the technical term. That relationship is going to have huge challenges because in that state, you're in the danger zone. People are going to say things, they're going to react to each other, they're going to respond in ways that really aren't a reflection of who they are, they're a reflection of the state they're in. How many of you have ever snapped at somebody, had nothing to do with them, it was just the state you're in, your body was hurting, you're going to something? Who's ever done this? Raise your hand, say I. But the problem is, we have a much higher standard of what we expect from our spouse. And when they do something like that, we rarely forget it, right? And so then it starts to stack. So as Chloe described the process of stacking great memories, most people get to where they are to the point of seeking you out because they've stacked the negative experiences. They didn't just take one experience and come to you. It's a series of experiences usually that have stacked and stacked and stacked until now it's like if I took my arm here and I rubbed your arm like this, no problem. But if you get a scab there and we touch you with a feather, you're going to jump out of your skin. It's the same thing of where people are. So building emotional fitness is the #1 gift you can give anybody, because otherwise if they come sit down, and I can't stand it when I sit down with couples like this, they're such whiners. And I just tell them that. He does this, she does that. I say, do you know what you sound like? Let me record this and play it back for you. Because we live in a world where everybody's focused on what they're not getting. And as you do that, there is no relationship. A relationship, when you're in love with somebody, what will you do for them? What? It's not a trade. It's not a, okay, I did this because you did that. If that's it, all you have is a transaction. That's why I honestly don't like the word partner. Because partner, it's a transaction. You got a business going. We got a deal here. We got some rules that we abide by. And I think that that is a reflection of what most marriages have become today, because our culture has hypnotized us. Our culture has hypnotized us into believing that this is what you should adjust to. And frankly, I know many therapists who are constantly trying to adjust to someone and say, well, no, this is just, you have to adjust to this stage of your relationship. This is where it is now. That spark that people had initially can come alive at any point, but it can't happen without the emotional fitness. So you and I, if we're going to transfer this to somebody else, frankly, we got to have it too. And think about this. Base of emotional fitness is energy. If you're exhausted, how the hell are you going to have passion in your relationship? I mean, people come home and it's like, even, especially if, let's say, one's kind of excited for whatever reason, kind of frisky or excited to be with that person. Let's say that lucky moment happens. Usually the other one's like, oh, honey,